By the end of this, you'll know exactly how to build any deck from the ground up that actually wins. We're going to talk about a few things that every deck needs, how to make your cards synergize, and how to play smart matchups even when you're out leveled. So let's build a deck together. Part 1. Foundation. Every successful deck has these main things that help elevate the deck. Number 1. A win condition. A win condition is any card that can consistently deal damage to the enemy tower. Some win conditions include Hog Rider, Golem, Goblin Barrel, Expo, Royal Giant, Graveyard, and even the Balloon. There's many more win conditions, but that's a few of them. The next thing you need is a tank. The goal of the tank is to be able to soak up large amounts of damage to ensure your squishier troops don't get killed. They can also be used to stop tower damage. Some examples include Knight, Ice Golem, Valkyrie, and the Giant. The next thing you need is a splash unit, and this is a card that can clear out swarms of troops. Some examples of cards that include that would be the Wizard, Executioner, Baby Dragon, or even Bomber. It's important to have a card or two in your deck that can take out swarms, as many decks will try to overwhelm you with lots of troops. The next thing you need is a spell. Spells may be the most important part of your deck. Now the hard part is choosing what spells work inside your deck and which don't. For a general rule of thumb, you want 2 spells. A small, cheap spell that can destroy skeleton armies or goblins, and a big spell like Rocket or Lightning to take out higher health troops or deal damage to the tower. Having both a cheap and expensive spell allows you to ensure coverage on almost any enemy troop. The next thing your deck needs is a building. Not all decks require buildings, but most do. Buildings are really good for dealing with troops that target your tower, as you can use the building as a decoy. It's a good counter against cards like Hog Rider, Lava Hound, or even Royal Giant. Right now, some of the strongest buildings in the game include Goblin Hut, Goblin Cage, and Bomb Tower. Not only can buildings be used on defense, but also as a win condition in some cases, like the Expo or Mortar. The final thing your deck needs is cycle cards. Cycle cards are typically low-cost cards like Skeletons or Ice Spirit. The goal of these cards is to allow you to rotate through your deck quicker to ensure you can cycle to your evolutions, and if you have a specific card counter like Log for Goblin Barrel, you are able to ensure you have the log in hand by cycling cards. Cycling cards can also be helpful to deal a small amount of damage to the tower so that you don't leak elixir. Something to note with all these card types is that the card types can overlap, and that can be a good thing. Part 2. Synergies. Alright, so now we have a bunch of cards that fit a given role, but how do we know which cards to choose for each role? That's where synergies come into play. In simple terms, synergy just means that there's a positive interaction when multiple cards are played together that's better than playing those cards individually. The first thing to think about when making synergy within your deck is covering your card's weaknesses. For example, if you have a Hog Rider, you might want to include a Log, since the Log can destroy common cards that would counter a Hog Rider, like Skeletons or Goblins. Another example would be Giant and a Wizard. The Wizard can take out swarm cards and air cards that your Giant otherwise couldn't. In return, the Giant can tank for your Wizard, allowing your push to survive. Covering weaknesses allows each card in your deck to excel at a given role. The second thing to think about is balancing your elixir. Ensuring your deck is roughly somewhere between 3 and 4 elixir allows you to counter 2.6 Hog and also be able to defend against 4.4 Golem decks. No matter what cards you choose, ensure you have some low-cost cards to help cycle and high-cost cards that allow you to push through the enemy defenses. The last thing about synergies is turning defense into offense. The best decks, and in turn the best players, typically will counter the enemy push first, then use the leftover cards to attack the opponent. For instance, let's say you use a Musketeer to counter a Balloon. After the Balloon is dead, put a tank in front of the Musketeer to provide a strong offensive counter push. Cycle through your cards, and repeat until you have defeated your opponent. The best decks in the game seem to have a natural flow to them. Part 3. Matchup Mindset. Okay, so your deck looks good, but you queue into a game and a level 15 Mega Knight player, and you think,
oh hell no!
Well, don't worry, this is where matchup awareness wins games. Understand your archetype. Most decks fall into one of 3 categories: beatdown, control, or cycle. Beatdown decks typically involve a very heavy tank like Golem and may only require one well-timed push to defeat your opponent. The goal with this style of deck is to overwhelm your opponent in a given push. The next type is control. The goal of these decks is to defend well, then after you've defended, you can use a counter push to deal some chip damage. The final deck, cycle. The goal of this deck is to outcycle your opponent and punish them when they overcommit on a push. Part 4. Building a deck. Now, something that's very important to consider when building a deck is the level of your troops. There's this website called Deck Shop, which I'll leave a link to down below, that shows you, when you type in your player ID, what cards you have that are high enough level to use. As you can see, it shows my win conditions, my support troops, my spells, my defensive buildings, and spicy cards that I can use to make a deck. If you want to use a card that's in this red section, that's okay, but understand that underleveled cards will struggle immensely, especially as you get higher in the ladder. The next thing I want to show you is my personal deck that I use. This is my 3.9 Golem deck. And as you can see, I use Golem as my main tank, Mini P.E.K.K.A. as a mini tank. We use Baby Dragon and Furnace to help deal with swarm cards. We have Vines and Barbarian Barrel as a spell, and I can also use the Barbarian Barrel to cycle. And then we have minions to deal with air defense and guards to help with counter tanks. Overall, this is a pretty good deck. But as you can see, our synergy isn't great, so that could be improved, but this is something important to look at when building a deck yourself. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.